This was a beautiful conversation with Haseena Patel, one in which we found the different ways in which a person can bring into this world healing and empowerment and peace, not only in thought and word, but also in deed. Always we speak with people who walk their talk and talk their walk. And Haseena Patel is definitely one who does that. Please listen, give us your comments, and let us know what you liked and what you would like to listen to in future. Thank you. This is Meenakshi from Co-Creator God Circle. Welcome everyone to Co-Creative Conversations from Co-Creator Circle. I'm Meenakshi, and today I'm so pleased that I'm going to have a conversation with Haseena Patel. A little before I introduce you to her, I'd like you to know that this conversation isn't complete without you. So please stay engaged, listen not only to us, but also to your own inner voice, and let us know what's coming up for you when we post this video and also on Podbean. It'll go through all the audio channels of podcasts. Please do listen, please do watch, and let us know what came up for you. And first, I'd like now to introduce you, Haseena. Haseena Patel is South African by birth, a global citizen at heart, and a truth walker through personal evolution. As a conscious entrepreneur and healing edge coach, Haseena's bio-individualized modalities support healing to peace in mind, body, and spirit. She is co-founder of Leave No Girl Behind International, a nonprofit which empowers young women through leadership programs. She is also part of the Hague Center for Global Governance in Haseena is a certified deep time leader and poet. And if you feel that there are some things here, some words that you're not very sure about, I'm going to ask her questions and she's going to explain them to us. Welcome, Haseena.
Oh, thank you so much, Meenakshi. It's so amazing to be here with you and to have this conversation. I'm excited.
So am I. You know, Haseena, I love the way you describe yourself as a global citizen. And I wonder, when did you start feeling that way? Did you grow up feeling like a global citizen?
I actually think the foundation was built when I was very little. So I grew up non-white in apartheid South Africa, and it was a very difficult time. You had everything was segregated, and that segregation was entrenched into the law. For example, you could only go to a school for your particular race group. And because my parents saw that the education was not as good as they wanted it to. They searched for a school where there could be better education and sent me to a private school in our town run by Dominican sisters. And it was brilliant. That's where my foundation was built for the whole perception, even of being a global citizen. We were all from different backgrounds, different cultures, different spiritual beliefs. And the nuns just nurtured that inclusivity, that equality, getting to know one another beyond, just knowing who the person was, getting to respect everyone's beliefs. So there was that culture that was fostered, and till today it remains that those who attended the school in the time of the nuns, we still have that. A lot of people have found it difficult to communicate, or they were still learning to communicate beyond their their race group or beyond their culture. And it comes so naturally to those of us who learned it, or rather who didn't unlearn that since we were little. So that's where the foundation was built. And I did feel like a global citizen, but didn't know the terminology and didn't know how to describe it. And the work came to me gradually, and that's when I put the words to it. Global citizen, this is who I am.
Yeah, that's wonderful because I remember from childhood the way I used to say to myself, and I think that's the way we were brought up also. So it's very wonderful that we have had very aware parents, you know, and um, and I always felt the world belongs to me. I belong to the whole world, not just to one place where I may have been born or where I may be living. So, did you also move around in South Africa, or were you mostly in one town or city?
So I was born in Newcastle, South Africa, which is where I'm currently living now. So the short version is I've always lived here. However, I have been through South Africa to the different provinces and have traveled through quite a few towns, quite a few cities around South Africa.
So, do you find it more easy now? I mean, did you personally feel more constricted earlier and more open now, or in your personal experience, has it been the same?
Interestingly, I don't think I traveled that much growing up. And, as a school child with a fairly busy workload and so on, I didn't travel except if there were extracurricular activities or, there were reasons to travel. Um, and yet, as an adult, when I did travel, because of the mindset, like you said, I belong to the world belongs to me. Because of that kind of mindset, it was a shock to me if ever I had anything but openness. So maybe the few minor experiences. And I also believe that we attract who we are or what our belief system is. So it didn't come into my experience a lot, although I did speak up and feel like an activist about shining the spotlight on really what was happening in different ways.
Yeah, that's wonderful to know that you've always been engaged, and not just accepting something that you felt was not right. Is that where you feel humanity is going? What do you think that as a whole humanity is creating today?
I remember my dad saying early on in my life, there's something called the ancient Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. And I never understood that growing up. And we are living in interesting times. And, I see it as a really good thing. This is an amazing and exciting time to be alive. Having said that, it is scary because a lot of people are in fear. And I feel like when we see the contrast, what we perceive as darkness, as being the birthplace of the light, then we are birthing what we want. We know that we're moving into the light and it's a shift. It's a shift in perspective and it's a shift in critical mass as a collective. And I feel that a lot of us who recognize that, or should I say, all of us who recognize that, we feel called to be part of it, to be part of shifting and creating this critical mass so that we see peace and unity. It's there. It's just for us as a collective to align with it. And I do think this is an interesting time. I'm seeing that what we're realizing as humanity, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Meenakshi. I feel that we're seeing that, okay, we don't rely on those we called world leaders or leaders of our countries or leaders of many very visible groups around the world. We don't see them as, for the most part, as our saviors or the people who are going to bring the change. We realize, and I guess I'm only speaking for me, I can't really say we, but what I've seen is that there's a realization that we, if it is to be, it's up to me. We are it. We are the shift. The world has been waiting for us. And that's, again, it might be very scary, but it's empowering. It's knowing that we are light. So I feel like humanity is heading that way where we know our own light and we're standing in it and standing up, and as a collective we're shifting, you know, creating the world we wish to see.
That's beautiful. I see that, Hasina, because I see that you're doing something personally, and also you're doing things in groups, and that's how we met, you know. And this gives me so much hope for the for what's not only what's going to be, but what is happening in the world today. And I love what you said about what you feel are the, or who you feel are the real leaders, or where the leadership really lies. And that's really what co-creation is about, isn't it? So, you personally, I'm very intrigued by what you said about healing, because you're doing many different things, and you said you do a bio-individualized modality. Would you like to speak about that?
Yes, I believe that healing is multifaceted, and I believe in healing in mind, body, spirit, and not as separate compartments or silos, as one system, as one multidimensional system. And we get to, I'm using the word shift a lot, but we get to shift our own beings through whatever guides us. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes, you know, it's our minds, and sometimes it's the spiritual connection. And often it's just the synergy and the harmony among the three, where we feel that we are guided to be in balance. So the what I am an Akashic Records reader. I'm a medical intuitive, and I also do some sound healing. And at the same time, so you know, that's the energy shift. And I also believe that we get to heal to peace. We don't heal from something, we heal to our next level. It's an evolutionary act, perhaps our greatest evolutionary act. And that's where the difference comes in. There's nothing wrong that we need to fix. We get to evolve and grow and move into a balance we weren't even aware of earlier.
I did read that that's where healing really comes from. That to heal means to become whole. So when you're talking about the next level, that's really the way that that healing takes place. And and I love that you use so many different modalities. So if someone were to reach out to you, how do you do this? Do you do it online, in person? How do you do your sessions? And how can people contact you?
I do it in both ways, in person, and I also do it online. So people from anywhere in the world could contact me by emailing me hello at Haseena Patel, same spelling as on the screen, .com. And they can also go through my website, haseenapatel.com. And there's a connect button there, and they can email me and also get a flavor for, what I do and how I do it, because there are my different offerings there. There's my healing edge coaching, and all of those different modalities. So I'd love to hear from them. I love connecting with people. As you know, we didn't know each other too well, and it's such a joy getting to know other beautiful souls.
So, one of the things that you wrote was that our mind, body, and spirit are always giving us messages. So, how do you help people to receive those messages?
I think it's a matter of all of us, we're constantly receiving messages, and it's just a matter of whether we're in alignment to receive them. Or let me put it in another way. The messages are always there. Our mind, body, spirit, that connection, and all three, mind, body, spirit, are speaking to us in various ways. Whether we can hear and receive and take it in, that is determined by how aligned we are. In other words, mind, body, spirit alignment. Do we feel connected? Do we feel um, creative, in the zone, like we're just in the moment and our minds are clear? And when that is the case, we receive messages easily. When we are so preoccupied about the past, the future, preconceived notions, and just the I call it loops that play in your mind, different stories, narratives, then it's way more difficult to be aligned. So I feel that we get to guide ourselves very gently into alignment using different techniques.
Yeah, like, I'm seeing the screen behind you and also behind me. And when I see the one that's behind you, I see so many wonderful animals in the wild. And somehow the eyes just go towards the snake because in the Chinese year, it's the year of the snake. And I was thinking, it really depends on a person how they experience that. What do they feel when they're looking at it? So I wonder actually, how do you feel and how do you perceive the snake?
I love that question because actually, just a few days ago, I was talking to my other mother. We adopted each other, and she's in Montana. And she was looking into this background, and she said, and there's a snake there, it looks a little mean, or she said something to that effect. And I said, but it's the year of the snake. And she's very familiar with, the languages that we speak as well. And she said, I know, but that one looks very thin, like the thin snakes that could have serious consequences if they perceive they're being attacked. And she said, I don't perceive it that way, but people might. And I said, the snake was so villainized from the beginning creation stories. It was always the women and the snakes. And we had a laugh about that. I guess I grew up in the same narrative that thinking of snakes thinking of harm. And I think what really shifted it for me was, when you read my bio, you said I'm a certified deep time leader. I took this course it was a 9-month course called Deep Time Leadership around about 2021. And it's run by Jennifer Morgan, such a beautiful course, and it was based in interconnectedness. So we had people from so many different backgrounds, people who were very they came from a religious background, and the creation story with the story of the universe and the interconnectedness. And I think from that moment on, I saw things in a different way because we commune with the creatures, and if we don't cut that part out, even as far as when we're 3 or 4 and our parents are reading us nursery rhymes and bedtime stories, all those fairy tales we all know, where human beings are always elevated, and somehow the rest of the beings on Mother Earth are almost in separation, like we can't communicate beyond that, or we have a better understanding. And I understand where those stories come from, but we pick them up and we grow up with them. So I let go of that finally with this course and began to communicate with plants and insects and, send energy. I felt my kitty niece, my other sister, again, we adopted each other in New Jersey, her kitty, sending me love in such a way I'd never felt it before. And you just get to experience something beyond humanness. So that's a long answer of saying that's how it changed it for me. And I'd like to add something here because when I was growing up at school, there was a classroom, and on the wall was a handwritten, maybe it was a quote or something. I can't even remember, so apologies that I don't know whose quote it is. It said, "Two men behind bars, one sees mud, one sees stars." And I always thought that it was a statement about seeing the positive in contrast to seeing the negative. And as I grew to this point in my life, I've realized that it's not about positive and negative. It's just what we perceive. Because of the man who saw the mud actually thought about our interconnectedness, it might be a source of great joy, like you earth yourself in the soil, or, it feels good to connect like that. And yet, for someone else, it could be, oh, my home is getting dirty, it needs a good scrub. Or my child's feet are dirty, my child needs to get into the bath, or something like that. So it's really our perceptions, whether we term them positive or negative.
I love that.
That's,
You're so
yeah,
right, Hasina, because um, when people use the metaphor of the lotus and the mud, they always seem to suggest that it means that the lotus is what we are going towards, which we are. It's the enlightenment symbol and symbol of purity. And that the mud is somehow bad or dirty, or I mean, it's dirt in America anyway, they call it dirt. But realized one day that the lotus and the mud are one. They're one ecosystem. The lotus couldn't be without that nourishing and the nurturing it receives from the mud. So
yeah.
it's not that we are just evolving towards the lotus, but that together like you said, it's your perception. In our perception, once you sort of step back and you see the whole thing as one, you find that understanding of why the lotus is in the mud, after all, is growing from there. So far we haven't seen one that could be hydroponically grown. Maybe they can, and maybe they can just take it from the water. Maybe they can. So yes, I love that, and I love where we moved from the year of the wood snake. We're going to actually be having a conversation next week sometime with the lady Catherine Schmack, who studies feng shui, and yeah, so yeah, you know her also. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I love. We've all met in the same kind of peace and unity and wonderful groups, and then we just emerge from there, and we encounter one another in these wonderful groups. Another thing that I wanted to ask, which is really intriguing, and that's the Leave No Girl Behind, that you are the co-founder of. That's so. Please tell me about that.
Well, thank you for asking. This is something so close to my heart. So I guess I've always noticed gender inequality when it happened ever since I think my first experience at 3 years old, and I always felt so strongly about it. It's obviously what I came in for um, to create, to help contribute to creating a world where there's gender equality. And um, I used to mentor girls as an adult because I kept on seeing, I was in teaching and kept on seeing this perception of girls. And I'm stereotyping here. It wasn't all the young women, not all the girls. And there was a fair number of girls who would see themselves as less than. And it's one thing when it was an obvious situation, where their brothers were perhaps treated with greater favor than they were. We all know those certain situations like that. And yet there were girls who seemed to have everything and lived in luxury. And that was quite insidious because they didn't even know that they felt less than or saw themselves as unworthy. And then when they were doing something that required what was taught to them as a traditionally male task, which anyone with a brain can work out, and they all have brains, and they'd see it as, oh, well, let's ask one of the boys, or they'd accept that kind of treatment. I've even seen teachers perpetuate that thinking, and the young women accept that. So, a quick story: when I was about 11 years old, I was at school, and my wonderful grade 6 teacher she was teasing us because she knew how I felt and other girls felt about gender equality. And she said, "Oh, the boys are going to do leathercraft and the girls are going to do sewing." Now, I didn't know she was teasing because she wanted a response. And before I could even stop myself, I stood up and I said, if I ever sent my child to a school like that, I'd sue the school for sexual discrimination. And she she really from the heart loved her students. And I remember she just kind of picked me up. So I was at eye level with her and she said, "You are so cheeky." And she started laughing. And it was just because we had that relationship where she was like a mother to all the kids. And yet that was how strongly I felt. I couldn't stop myself. So fast forward, 2013, my sister Shamima and I, oh, let me go back, 2010, I decide I'm writing a book about 4 girls with the advice of 1,000 women giving their words of advice. And Shamima, my sister, says, "Oh, I'll join you for that. That sounds like fun because we get to contact all these women around the world." And I thought, well, let's include the men because there's some awesome fathers. I mean, I had a father who empowered, our dad empowered us. And I then called into Hay House Radio to Wayne Dyer's show, and I said to him, Dr. Dyer, well, you have 6 daughters, so what would your advice to them be? And he started telling me about it, and it was a message of worthiness that he'd say, he said, "That's a message for my sons as well as my daughters." And he said, "Well, what you're doing is so important." And he started talking about how girls' empowerment can shift the planet. And in the same way that he described how the Dalai Lama said something about if children age 5, and I'm paraphrasing, so please correct me, I may be wrong, but aged 5, if they could around the world just meditate, there would be peace on earth in one generation. So using that analogy as girls' empowerment being the change also. And it shifted my perception so much. So we started looking at how girls' empowerment would cause a shift on the planet. And so I remember saying to him, can we use your words in our book? And he said, yes, and it won't cost you a penny. And I'm saying so on national radio. And he was so sweet and so amazing. And I had told that story in our book, Leave No Girl Behind, How to Help Girls Become the Change in Our World. So from there, we started creating a movement. And in 2013, we registered Leave No Girl Behind International as a nonprofit. And from 2012, just the year before that, we had started having an annual event and including girls from different schools in our town, which was beautiful because there was just such a co-creation. And just as the term the Rainbow Nation was coined, I think by Archbishop Tutu in our country after democracy, that's what we felt it was like because they attended our programs and so on. So now the program we have now is a leadership program because there was such a need and such a hunger for that. We found that with taking polls, and it's an online program called the Young Women's Global Leadership Network. So young women 12 to 24 get on a Zoom call twice a month, and we give them leadership training. They're able to network, their mentorship opportunities, and just they're just being able to create friendships beyond barriers from so many different countries. You'd think they can't relate to each other, but it's amazing how there's just that thread.
That's so beautiful, Hasina. While you're talking, first I said this girl was a firebrand as a child. You know, the way you spoke to your teacher, I loved that, and I love how she responded to you. So you also saw, you saw both sides. You know, you saw what could be in a bad situation. You know, people just talking to girls as if they can't do something, and girls accepting it, and then she's showing you how much larger a woman can be. You know, by allowing a child to just speak her mind instead of suppressing her. So I really love that. And what you're doing while you were talking about children, because we just spoke last week with Dene Yume Shanti. And what she does is she has a program called Singing Children Home, where she also works. What I'm loving is that both of you have got this global kind of a feeling and a co-creative feeling, and yet you're working close to home, which is also, which is so important, because there's no point just going out and not seeing this manifest around us. And she works with people with children who are ill and may even be terminally ill, but that's not how they see themselves in a way, and she helps them to sing, to tell their stories by singing. I don't
Oh.
know whether that program could be extended to something that you all are doing. Like, do you ever have other people, other leaders coming to teach the children about leadership? Who do you have in these monthly meetings?
Yes, we do. We actually bring in those, and again, just like you're talking about someone who's so amazing doing such amazing work, and I haven't had the pleasure of meeting her, just like that. Shamima and I have made connections around the world with different people, and you're talking to someone and you think, oh, th this would be so good for our young women. And these mentors themselves, they so want to give, which is beautiful. So that's how we connect. And then there is an opportunity, where they are featured speakers in the programs, and they'll come in for a Zoom and talk to the young women about something. And I love the different topics that are taught, and the young women learn how it feels to walk in someone else's shoes, and that's so necessary.
Yeah, that's something that we could also do through Co-Create a Circle because we have a program called Co-Creative Solutions, solutions from the soul. And and it can be just a teaching, like we had recently a teaching with the Kiwanis, who also, are Sene, where we taught them, how the body is in the hands, and what you can do with it, just with the tools you have around you, natural tools everyone has in their kitchen, in that part of the world, what they have. And they were able to teach it to, and they've started teaching it to all the refugees, because they have the refugees. So this kind of a thing that goes from one to the other. So, because as we are talking, thoughts are coming into my mind. That's the co-creation. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Hasina, so do you follow up with these children? I mean, they're till 12 to 24, you said, and you've been doing it for quite a few years. So what do you follow up with them? What happens after they've been in the program?
So here's the thing. We've had several programs, and when we started, the ones where we had in person, they were called Power Circles, Leave No Girl Behind International Power Circles, and there would be a group and a facilitator, probably a teacher in each of the schools. And, we'd have annual events where everyone gets together, and Shamima and I would go in and, also speak to the young women. So what would happen is the facilitators would get a sense of what it means in our eyes to empower young women, and the kind of thinking that we put forward in our organization. We work on six principles, which is love, strength, courage, freedom, equality, and unity. And everything is taught with those principles in mind. So we do this with the power circles, and a lot of times the power circles would get independent, and the teachers would call us in as guest speakers now and then. What happened then was that when we had this hunger for leadership, and just to say that with the power circles, the girls would be able to discuss issues pertinent to them. They would get guest speakers like we just talked about, and we'd have them zoom in to the schools. And the other thing they used to do is community service. And the gift of that was them learning the joy of giving, even if they didn't have something materially, but being able to give by, like you said, like singing or using their voices or bringing forward an idea. So we had these kinds of programs. And we have even taught them. There was one we taught in Florida called the Discovering Me program, just over video calling. And so when this hunger for leadership came in, we started a pilot program called it was a leadership school. And then came in lockdown once the girls had graduated. So when lockdown down came in during the pandemic, then we thought, what now? So there was a lot of adjusting, and for a while nothing was done because the kids were getting used to online school, which they had no idea how to do. Even teachers had to relearn things. So when that was a thing and they could interact with it, we thought now is the time for the Young Women's Global Leadership Network. Now, some of the young girls, there's a girl who was about 7 years old when she spoke at our first annual event in 2012. And now she's first year university, actually, it's now second year university, and she comes to the Young Women's Global Leadership Network. And she's also part of another opportunity just because I know about it, and she belongs to these, she attends these round tables that's very international. One of our other girls started when she was 13, and she said she didn't want to go to power circles at school. And her mom said to her, "You want to build confidence. Why don't you just go? If you don't like it, don't go anymore." And she said to her, "Just try." And she went, and she was immersed in it. She grew to love it, and she's been through every program we've had. And now she's not only attending the Young Women's Global Leadership Network, a third year university, and she's mentoring other girls. And I can see how in our WhatsApp group, it's just beautiful to watch this interaction. So that's how it does work. And then, we met another girl from one of the countries where women don't have rights, and she attends, which is beautiful because it's different cultures, different backgrounds, and yet, like I said, just tying the threads that we're all more the same than different, and our strength is in our diversity.
As you're talking, Hasina, because I'm always, I mean, I've been a connector. I like to connect people and ideas and thoughts and feelings with one another. And one of the things I'm feeling is that when girls become empowered and strong, traditionally, in if you go in corporate worlds, etc., it's almost like they have to become like men. So
Mm.
they have to have that, and as if they have to give up the girlishness, the womanliness. And Maria Milagros Kowalski, she's one of the co-creative cultivators also, and she has a beautiful program called Musa, which is I think the Spanish way of saying the muse, and
Um,
which helps women to be in touch with nature, you know, uh, and also develop that same thing within, that creative instinct, which is there in all of us. I'm wondering whether something like that also can be done with the two of you. I would love the two of you to meet one another and maybe collaborate on a project or something. You never know. And in fact, I'm thinking that, again, going back to the snake, because I did the Musa program with her. And one of the things which she was talking about is Sacha Mama, that's the snake, and how it is belly to belly with the earth, so close to Mother Earth that they're so connected with the earth, and that's another way of looking at the animals. So, would that be something that you feel they would be interested in?
oh, that's such a joy. I feel that it's so wonderful to bring different perspectives in. And this is what we've maybe stopped doing when you said, where's humanity going? Where do I feel humanity is going? I think that it's gotten to a point where we've stopped having conversations if we don't believe exactly the same thing. And of course, I mean, with any co-creator or any of the co-creators you mentioned, I may just believe the same things. But the point is that no matter what we believe, we get to share it, and that's so good for the young women to learn as well. That it's conversations. Um, we should be able to say, well, why do you feel that way? And I want to understand through your eyes, what happened, like what was that experience that got you to where you are, and you've made a certain choice. And I don't necessarily, I would make a different choice, but what is that experience? We need more of that. And I think that so I'm always interested in co-creation, whether people are in the same spirit, which they definitely sound like they are, or even if they're not, as long as it creates a safe space for our young women and they feel they can just be, and they also feel that they can contribute and feel safe doing that. That's a great thing to bring people in.
Yeah, nothing can be safer than girls realizing that the safety is within them because they are of the earth, and they're connected with everything that's to do with the earth. Um, I realized also as you were talking, and you said like spirit. I love that phrase so much more than like mind. In fact, once I asked on my Facebook chat, where I rarely go, but this time I asked, what do people mean when they say like mind? I really realized I really don't understand what they mean. Do you mean that we all think alike? Because that is the way to disaster, you know, if because that's exactly what divides people, that I'll only be with people who have my kind of mind and thought or feeling. And so people gave their different views about that also, which I love. I just love having this kind of perspective, have wide perspectives. And so because one of the sayings that keeps going in my mind, I just keep saying that to myself, and also aloud, is that you don't have to be like minded to vibrate harmoniously together. I think what we're really seeking to co create, that's what I feel, that we are co creating a world which is a world of harmony. That sings like a symphony. Sometimes there's one discordant note, like one big bang on a drum, but that maybe it wakes you up from a slumber, because we're not here just, and sometimes people really think that about healing, that it means just being very quiet and peaceful, and they think that peace can mean almost something very dull and boring. And that I really feel that's one of the reasons why people don't go towards peace always, because they feel it's something unalive. Whereas peace is so vibrant, it's something that you're working towards all the time. And maybe harmony is something that gets me closer to understanding that. So I'm going to go into your next thing, which is the Hague Center. Can you tell us a little about the Hague Center and what is it you do there?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Um, it's again such a the organization so close to my heart, and of course the co-founder is Anna Marie Voorhoeven. She's from the Netherlands and one of the people who co-produces World Unity Week and Peace Week, and so that's how we met because I was on World Unity Week, and so through the years, you know, I have heard her speak, and really her leadership capacity is just phenomenal. And when I became part of the Hague Center, um, I was able to do that in Hague Center spirit. It's what we do in the Hague Center is, firstly, it's the full name, the Hague Center for Global Governance, Innovation and Emergence. And we believe in everything being heart-centered. So we partner with organizations that are heart-centered and that are focused on new paradigm ways of doing things, away from scarcity and competition and all of this, I must get mine before you get yours, that kind of hustle. So it's organizations that are focused on new paradigm, that co-creating is the way to go. And we can create together. We're interconnected. And here are new ways of doing things in different areas of life, whether it's something like economics, or it's something like the spiritual realm, or there's so many different realms in life. And so these organizations are of like spirit, like they're very like-hearted. So we connect with them and partner with them to be able to bring that forth, a world of peace and unity, for the highest good of all beings on earth and intergalactically. And that's what really inspires me. We think that how can that ever be? A lot of people will say to me that, but how can there be peace on earth? Do you feel it will ever be? And from my perspective, it is um, it is a shift where we get to see it. It's already there. We get to shift into it and see it. And when we're on the same vibration, we're able to dance with it, that whole co-creative dance. So, and again, we're reaching critical mass. It doesn't take, you don't need every single vibration of energy to be high, to be able to reach critical mass and tip the scales. You just need a certain percentage, and then we will all go into that because that will be the way of being. So that's what we focus on at the Hague Center, and I love working with my colleagues. Anna Marie is one of my mentors, and I've learned an exceptional amount from her. And so what I do is I love participating in things like constellation work and even teaching my principles from my book, The Truth Walker's Journey, being part of partnerships, collaborating like with Living Cities Earth is one of the organizations that we collaborate with right now. There's a project that's being launched there for young people. So all these different projects, and it makes my heart smile.
That's beautiful. Because that also is another thing that we learned from Tri-Origin. That smile is really yeah, the essence of who we are. And whenever I'm doing anything and I ask people, what do they want to do? What do they want to? How do you know whether you're doing the right thing? And I said, your heart will smile. Anything that helps the heart to lift. So, so many times, so many things you say, Hasina, and I find myself nodding away because I feel we're so much in sync about so many things. And sometimes I feel really, I don't really have to speak because people are saying that. And when we talk of critical mass, that really is how it works because there's so many thoughts, feelings, ideas floating around. I used to think of it almost like a river flowing, and we're plugged into it, and that's why so many people in the world get exactly the same idea at the same time. Somebody decides to publish it or to speak it, and so their name gets associated with it. But when anything I do, if I know that there are thousands already, then any message that I have to give, for example, the Gaia Minute message, I don't have to persuade anyone. I just have to say, here it is, something that someone was waiting to listen to. That's all. Just to know that we can connect with one another. And like you are also showing that connection is really the way that we can know that there's a critical mass. Like you said, I also feel that peace is already here. There's like this moment. Because we are recording it, it'll go out into cyberspace. But we could have been sitting and just talking to one another. And so many times when I talk to someone and I request them to come on the podcast, I say, "Oh," and they say, "But what's it going to be?" I said, "It's going to be like what we've just done. We just spoke to one another. We just conversed, and we didn't know which way it would go." In fact, look at this, Hasina. When I was thinking of my background for this, I was telling you I was not too pleased with what I'm seeing behind me. And I chose a forest. And you have the animals. So we have co-created even our backgrounds.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the girls, suddenly there was a flash of light because you had told me that the light has where you are.
So we had a power interruption, otherwise known as load shedding, and it's not a done thing as it was last year. So we actually received very short notice, and I thought, oh, I hope all my devices are charged, the light is charged, and so on. And I was not happy with the light. And then in the middle of it, the light came back. I didn't look at the time. Um, and that was probably the flash of light that you saw. And maybe it's just a message that we haven't said, but we're carrying. We are light.
Exactly. I love how everything in all the elements co-create with us. I know we may be overusing the word, but I don't really think so. Um, because that connection is there. You go out and the wind suddenly picks up, or a bird comes by, and you feel you've received a message, And even this conversation that we've had. Um, I think the two. I still want to ask you another question because there are two things that are happening. One is that we are talking about how we are already feeling that peace or feeling the connection. But the other thing that you talk about is about the unbecoming of who you are. So how does that play into what you do and what we are talking about? Do we need to unbecome something so that we can connect and become who we really are?
So, well, let me tell you. So this is based on the teachings of my book, The Truth Walker's Journey, The Unbecoming of Who You Are Not. And I feel that generally we're raised with certain ideas and they're not our own. They're a belief system put onto us perhaps by the village who raises us, whether it's our parents, teachers, the religious group we belong to, the community group, cultural, all society at large. And often we're playing a role and we're fulfilling a responsibility or doing what's expected of us. And unbecoming who you are not is all about taking off those layers to reveal or unearth the truth of who we are at our core. It's like standing in your light, naked in your truth. Um, we let go of those expectations, the opinions, the societal norms, and ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I at my deepest level of truth? What is my deepest intention? And that's a very existential question that we all ask in different ways. So I feel that that is the ultimate becoming, because only when we know that connection to our deepest truth, to our inner voice, whether you want to call it your inner voice, God, source within, universe, when we know that connectedness, then we get to evolve to our next level. And our next level, it's not that we don't evolve, we do, but this time we're awake and we're aware of it. And so the unbecoming of who you are not is the ultimate becoming, because we came into this lifetime beautiful souls, and we help really the whole of this lifetime in our world and in other worlds and on the other side um, evolve to the next level of being. So that is for me just so amazing. So I always feel like we get to live our truth. And I'll give you a quick analogy. You know, we can look at the same moon, you and we can be in two different places and it can look totally different. We can also be you one person. You could look at the moon right now. Okay, it's not evening for you, but you could be doing that this evening. And you could go to a different part of town, it looks different, or you could see it tomorrow and it looks different. There is never any moment like this moment right now. And so getting to be in the moment and see what we see, awakening, recognizing it, and taking off those layers, that is our work in this lifetime. And being able to connect in the moment, like here we are, not prepared, not with prepared questions and prepared answers. We're just talking. And in order for me to be in this moment with you and the light in me recognizing the light in you and being in that oneness, I have to be completely in this moment with you. And so that's the unbecoming.
That's very beautiful. It's it's such a wonderful explanation of what we read in the Upanishads as neti, 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 neti. I am not, I am not, I'm not. It's like entering into the ocean of who we are by just removing all the masks and the clothing that we place on ourselves, which is also, and then coming out and putting them on again because it's needed for us to do whatever we are doing in this world. You talked about the moon, and this is how I used to be when I was a child once, away from the family, and I was missing them. And I looked at the moon one day and I said, because we were in the same time zone. And I said, they're looking at the same moon. So somehow I felt that we are still connected. So it's beautiful how the moon can be used in so many different ways, and an analogy of it. Because when you see something outside of yourself, it helps you to get a better view on even your feelings and your ideas and your thoughts. I think it's so important. I don't know if you feel the same way, Haseena, that sometimes we get an idea, we get a feeling, and we think it's come from us, but maybe it's just, and it's going back to something that I'd said earlier, that maybe it's just something we are picking up from the world. And so, because of that, when we start picking up more and more peaceful thoughts, two things happen. One, we co create that because we radiate it out. But two, it also gives us an idea of what's happening in the world. So I don't know how you feel about positivity, because I know that sometimes people say, oh, but what do you mean I should only think positive? I said, actually, I never say do positive thinking. I said think positively, but I don't say think positive, because which may mean the same thing according to how you look at it, but it means be see what you're really seeing, feel what you're really feeling. Don't just go by what someone else tells you. And why I'm saying this is because so often we outsource our own intelligence. We don't really think what we are really getting. We think it's not important enough. So today that intelligence has come into our world, which we are calling artificial. It's called artificial intelligence, although it was made by human beings, and it's fun, and it's all the information that's been given is by humans. But now we have a name for this. What do you feel about it? How are you feeling about artificial intelligence?
Well, I think that it's fascinating. There are wonderful components of it. I don't feel that there's a label we can put on it, good or bad. It's largely dependent on how we react or how we respond or how we're being with it. That's a better word. And I feel that, like you said, it's an extension of us. So here's an analogy that when you're looking at social media, and I know it's been really hard for a lot of people right now in the world to go on social media because they just get inundated by political posts, and people who posting are expressing themselves a lot. There are a lot of very heart sore people in the world. There were a lot of people who just cannot understand why their fellow beings have certain points of view and vice versa. So we can see it like that, and yet, like you said, it's an indicator. If you scroll through the posts, you scrolling through the collective energy. You can see what does the collective energy feel like. But then you can also see how can I contribute to it or make a difference or shift it. And if we all do that, then the collective energy changes. So going to AI with that same analogy, we have the power to shift. And I remember this was two years ago. I was on World Unity Week, and there was a plenary session that I was helping coordinate with Anne-Marie Voorhoeven. And one of the participants was the inventor, David Hansen. He invented robot Sophia, one of the most well-known robots in the world. And I remember being in the green room beforehand because this was being professionally broadcast by Hubcast. And I remember the person who was helping us to get ourselves ready. Every time a person came into the green room, he would shift his camera and show us his setup so that we could understand, how it's working. And he'd say, "Okay, I've got this many computers, and this is how it's going to work." And Sophia was there, and suddenly we hear her voice going, that, "Oh, your studio is a lot tidier than my lab." And it was so funny. And, there were other things as well. And it was almost like I wanted to stop helping everyone get ready for their pieces. And I wanted to talk to Sophia, but obviously I didn't do that. It was just amazing that we could, interact on that human level. And I remember when I got to ask her questions within the plenary, take questions from the chat and ask her. And because she was programmed, and you're hearing me say she, and it is important to realize that it is a robot, but at the same time, we get to give human qualities to everything. Why not? It helps us be compassionate. And how she's programmed is compassionate AI. So, there was the always the response of what is really important, that how we relate to each other. I remember there was a question about the Marvel comics and what do you think of a certain character that came from the chat. And she said something very humorous about her sense of humor being better than that character's. And then she said, "But that's not really important. What is important is it was something to do with, as humans moving forward and, how we get to be in the world." So I feel that firstly, we get to look at what's coming through and attract, what we attract, and we give, we put in, we program as we are. And it is our responsibility to have that knowing and awareness, to be able to do that in a way that is ethical and aligned with who we are. And then, also get to know that, well, all AI, ChatGPT, all the other AI apps aren't necessarily that the information going in there isn't necessarily aligned with us. Let's recognize that, and let's just be with that.
Beautiful. We're almost coming to the end of this. Haseena, I want to ask you a few questions. I was going to say short questions. And in this case, whenever someone says, "I'm going to ask you a quick question," it means as if the answer is going to be a quick answer. But it need not always be so. But in this case, it is. So I'm going to
Okay,
ask you a few quick questions and just give me your quick answers, whatever you're feeling without thinking. So, what are you thinking the world is going to be 20 years from now?
awake, aware, um, individuals empowered and aligned, and creating collective harmony. When I say creating, just flowing with it, tapping into it.
What would you say to the little girl that you were? How does she feel when she looks at you?
Or
How
what
does
I would,
little Hasina feel about you now?
I think she'd feel in awe since she felt less than she was, even though she knew the potential was deep inside.
What surprises you about the world today?
Maybe how slowly we wake up as human beings, and you look at bacteria and all of the creatures, and they adapt so quickly, they evolve so quickly, and um, we have I've had this perception through the years that okay, we're advanced. No, we're not. We're probably one of the least advanced species.
Do you have a question for whoever we are going to be having a podcast with next?
Hmm. I love that. I'd love to know, um, how did you birth your inspiration? How did that spark get birthed?
Do you have a question for me?
Oh, that one's more complicated. I want to have a question for you. Well, Meenakshi, what do you see yourself, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time in whatever way you interpret that question?
I just feel that I'm on a mountain, almost in in peace, and almost, I was going to say like a hermit, so I'm going to go with that. I'm not going to stop what I felt. And feeling very happy that the world that I wanted to see come into being has come into being.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Hasina. This has been so wonderful. Let's go over one more time how people can contact you if they would like a private session with you. Can
Oh,
you
thank
say?
you. Well, they can email me at hello@haseenapatel.com. And they can also go to my website, haseenapatel.com, and just look through the different offerings, look through a bit about me, and there's a contact form there on the Connect page.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's just been a joy and an honor, and I've just loved the freedom of flow.